Hi guys, welcome back to the Explorer Academy, The Nebula Secret, written by Trudy Truitt and brought to you by National Geographic Publishing. Today we're going to be reading chapter 18, and that starts on page 166. If you have your book, you can follow along, and if you don't have your book, you can just listen to the story. Let's get started. The message was in my birthday note all this time, except I didn't know it. I thought it was just a note, and the swirls were just swirls. But then Emmett found a cipher on the back of the photo, and we just coded the the symbols, and it turned out... Whoa, slow down, Cruz, cried his dad from the front passenger seat of Aunt Marisol's hybrid. You too, Marisol, or you're going to get us killed. Sorry, said his aunt, easing up on the gas pedal, but the Academy Library closes in 15 minutes, and with this traffic, it's going to be close. His dad looked at Cruz in the back seat. All right, start again, but please use punctuation this time. Mom left me a message, Cruz said. She wrote it in code on the birthday letter you gave to me. She left the cipher on the back of a photo of me she kept in her office. Aunt Marisol gave me Mom's stuff, and Emmett and I found the photo with the cipher. We decoded the message. He handed his father the notepad. See, Mom said she kept a journal. She told me to find it. I had no idea. I didn't know where to begin looking, said Cruz. I had no idea what those numbers and symbols at the end meant. At first, I figured Mom hid the journal in the synthesis, but Dr. Fallowfeld nixed that idea. He said everything was destroyed in the fire. Dr. Fallowfeld? Broke in Aunt Marisol. You didn't tell me you found Dr. Fallowfeld. He found me. Cruz saw a look pass between his aunt and his dad. He said Nebula was behind Mom's accident. He warned me they would come after me too. He practically ordered me to leave the academy. When did he say this? Asked his dad. The day of orientation. And you're just telling us this now? Dad, Cruz rolled his eyes. The point is, I thought the journal was gone forever. Then when we got on the plane, I was thinking about Aunt Marisol's postcards. I remembered how she said she and Mom liked the Chronicles of Narnia series, and they used to use books as ciphers when they passed notes at the academy. That's when it hit me. Mom was trying to tell me where to find the book. Cruz stretched forward, tapping the pad in his father's hands. Look, if you put a decimal between 3 and 9, it reads 823.912. CSLEW. It's the library's card catalog system. I bet that's where the series is located on the shelf in the Academy Library. And if we look inside one of the books or in the box set, we'll find Mom's journal. Not today, we won't, said Aunt Marisol, craning her neck. We're bumper to bumper here, and it's a good 10 blocks from school. His dad was frowning at him. You really think it's there? I do, said Cruz. We can run faster than this. Cruz's dad flung open his door. Let's go, son. Opening his door, Cruz hopped out of the car. Wait! Aunt Marisol was waving her security card at him. You'll need this to get in. I'll meet you there. Cruz grabbed the card and took off after his dad, who was already sprinting down the sidewalk. About 6 blocks later, Cruz's legs started to give out. It felt like his lungs were a second away from imploding. He had to stop. His dad was at the corner. Come on, Cruz! I can't take another step. I can't. Yes, you can. His dad ran back to him. We're almost there. You can see the roof of the academy from here. We can make it. Somehow they did make it. Cruz dragged himself up the mountain that was the front steps of the academy and waved the card in front of the sensor next to the security camera. The door opened and they raced inside, zipping through an empty lobby. Rounding the corner, Cruz prayed he'd see an open library door at the end of the long hall. He did. They weren't too late. Mr. Rook, cried Cruz, speeding past the checkout desk. A red head popped up. Cruz? Chronicles of Narnia. Where? Narnia? That would be in fantasy. To the left. Across from your favorite chair, but I'm about to close. This will only take a second. Cruz flew into the maze of bookcases. He knew exactly which turns to take to navigate the way to his favorite thinking spot. Now it was his turn to yell. Come on, Dad! Right behind you. Cruz zigzagged through the stacks, running to the rhythm of the numbers in his head. 823.912, 823.912, 823.912. This way, Daddy called, throwing out verbal breadcrumbs for his dad to follow. Turn left at the magazines. There, just past the olive chair, he spotted the 800 to 8900 label on the end of the bookcase. Darting down the row, Cruz began scanning the spines. 801, 809, 814, 818, 821, 823, 823.325, 823.736, 823.946. No, he shrieked. What? His dad pulled up beside him, panting. It's not here. It must be checked out. Don't panic. Look again. Cruz did, but it was no use. It's gone, Dad. It should be here between 823.736 and 823.946, but there's... Above him, a gray box teetered on the wrong side of a bookend. Was it possible the series had been misshelved? Cruz reached for a corner. The moment he saw the flowing mane of Aslan the lion, he let out a whoop. He flipped the box set around to its open side and saw 7 spines. None of them looked like a journal. Could it be inside one of the books? Cruz slid out The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Aunt Marisol said this one was Mom's favorite. Balancing the book flat on his palms, a wave of fear rolled through him. Cruz was scared to look and scared not to. What if it wasn't here? No, it would be here. It had to be here. Cruz eased open the cover. He turned one page and another. He went faster and faster until he fanned through several chapters. There was no journal, no swirling symbols, not even a new clue. Let's check the rest of the series, said his dad. They split the remaining 6 titles between them, and they found nothing. Drained against the shelf, Cruz sagged. I guess I was so sure. Sorry, son, it was a long time ago. Running his hand over the inside of the shelf, he blew the dust from his fingers. There's no telling what would have happened to it. It could have been lost or sold at a library book sale, or they might have even recycled it. Half of the lights went out. The library was closing. We'd better go, said his dad. Defeated, Cruz shuffled back through the stacks. He supposed his dad was right. 100 things could have happened to the journal in 7 years. Still, wouldn't his mother have factored that in? She was a brilliant scientist. It seemed unlikely she'd have given her journal in a place where any explorer looking for a good book might discover it. Also, she wouldn't have taken the chance that it might get lost or sold or recycled. If her journal wasn't as important to her as her work, which she locked up every night, she'd want to put it somewhere safe, somewhere special, someplace where only a select few would have access to it. Cruz grabbed his dad's arm. I know where the journal is. Where? His neck snapping back, Cruz spun in a circle until he saw the round wooden door. He pointed to the 5th level of the rotunda. There, behind that door. What is it? Special collections, said Mr. Rook, poking his head out from around the corner. Mr. Rook, cried Cruz, can you please take us to the rare book room? I'd like to, but I know you're closing, but it'll only take a few minutes. It's not that. Don't you remember only explorers are allowed in the special collections room, and well, I'm afraid you... He glanced at Cruz's bare wrist. Cruz knew. He wasn't an explorer anymore. I am sorry, said the librarian. Just last week, Cruz could have gone inside the special collections room, but now Cruz couldn't believe it. He was only one door away from finding his mother's journal. He had come so close. He could not let it slip away. If uncovering the journal hinged on trusting Mr. Rook, then Cruz didn't see he had any other choice. He was going to have to tell the librarian exactly why he needed to get in that room. Mr. Rook, my mom was a scientist for the society, said Cruz. She died when I was 5, but she left a letter for me. I only got it right before I came to the academy. She asked me to find her journal. She said it was her life. I know it contains important things she wrote. Please, he begged. It's the last request she ever made of me. I have to know if it's there. The librarian stroked his red beard. I could lose my job if it ever got out. It won't, said Cruz. I promise it won't. We only have one Chronicles of Narnia book upstairs, said Mr. Rook. Cruz had a feeling he knew which one it was. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Mr. Rook nodded. All right, I'll take you up. Let me close first. Thank you, said Cruz's dad, holding out his hand. I'm Marco Coronado. Malcolm Rook. The 2 men shook hands. Hang tight and I'll be right with you. While the librarian locked the doors and turned out the lights, Cruz texted his aunt to let her know what was going on. Soon Cruz and his dad were climbing the spiral iron staircase behind Mr. Rook. The trio moved quickly up the side of the enormous rotunda from one level to the next to reach the curved catwalk on the 5th tier. Outside the round door, Mr. Rook pressed his thumb against a square screen, then entered a long numerical code. Cruz held his breath until he heard the latch give way. Mr. Rook pressed on the handle and pushed the door open. He stepped inside. Turning on the lights, he motioned for Cruz and his father to enter too, then closed the door behind them. Cruz was surprised. The half-moon-shaped room was nothing like the grand modern library it was attached to. It was packed with antique bookcases, cabinets, chests, with barely enough space for one person to slip between the pieces of furniture. The walls were covered in old-fashioned coral-colored wallpaper with white roses. There was no windows. The place reminded Cruz of Aunt Marisol's attic, with one noticeable difference. The place was spotless. There was not a single cobweb or speck of dust anywhere. "Oh, I know it looks like your grandmother's attic," said Mr. Rook, "but it's far from it, thanks to high-level security and state-of-the-art climate control. The temperature remains at a steady 68.5 degrees Fahrenheit with 25% humidity. It's all carefully regulated and monitored to ensure optimum conditions for our books, documents, and photos." Emmett would be happy to know that, thought Cruz. Warm from all the running, Cruz took off his jacket and hung it on one of the hooks by the door. On the other side of the door, a workbench held various tools. A mix of old-fashioned and high-tech gadgets lined the table. A set of knives and awls, assorted glues, an old book press, a microcomputer, and a mind control camera. At the end sat a long white gizmo that resembled the handle of a solar-powered toothbrush. Cruz had no idea what that was. "The book press belonged to Benjamin Franklin," said Mr. Rook. "Cool." Cruz bent for a closer look. It was just two pieces of old chipped wood held together with a black metal clamp with a handle for turning, but knowing it was once owned by Benjamin Franklin made it something special. Cruz thought about touching it, but didn't want to get in trouble. He was in enough trouble already. "When it comes to special collections, I do all hologram, book, and document recovery and restoration myself," boasted the librarian. "Impressive," said Cruz's dad. Mr. Rook slid out the top drawer of a small oak chest to his left and took out several pairs of white cloth gloves. He handed a set to Cruz and another to his father. "Put these on. They'll keep the oils and dirt from your fingers from damaging the works. Everything here is rare, old, expensive, irreplaceable, or all of the above." "We'll be careful," said Cruz, putting on the gloves. "The book you want should be in that first row in the tall bookcase with the glass doors. See it next to the mirrored armoire at the far end with the hollow videos?" Mr. Rook gestured about 20 feet ahead. "It'll be either on the 3rd or 4th shelf. Be careful with it, please. It's a signed first edition copy in excellent condition. It's worth $30,000. "30,000? gasped Cruz's dad. "At least that. It was given to the Academy by Mr. Lewis himself." Cruz's breath caught in his throat. If that was true, he doubted he would find his mother's journal there. She wouldn't cut out the pages of such a valuable book to hide her journal between the covers, would she? There was only one way to find out. Cruz's stomach began doing backflips as he made his way down the narrow space between the furnishings. What if it wasn't there? When he reached the 5-tiered bookcase, Cruz carefully opened the 2 glass doors and began scanning the spines on the 3rd shelf. Cruz followed the author's last names as they progressed in alphabetical order. It ended at the J's. He had to go down on one knee to see the 4th shelf. As his eyes moved across the spine, his heart began to thump faster. "There! Lewis!" "Got it!" Cruz pulled out the hardcover book, wrapped in a light gray dust jacket. Near the middle of the book, he noticed a white corner peeking out between the pages. It looked like an ordinary piece of scrap paper that someone had used as a bookmark, and yet... Standing up, Cruz reached for the marker. "Cruz, stay where you are," said his dad, his voice sounding odd. Glancing up, Cruz saw that his father had his hands raised. Next to him, the Academy's head librarian was pointing something at his dad's ribs. Cruz recognized the long white tool from the workbench. "Hey, Mr. Rook," Cruz laughed nervously. "What's going on?" Ah, Cruz, replied the librarian. It's really quite simple. I've been looking for something and you've found it for me. Lifting his arm, he aimed at a spot above Cruz's head. A red laser beam shot from the device. In seconds, the burst had burned a hole clean through the ceiling and the roof. Cruz could see daylight coming through the charred opening. The place smelled like someone was burning burgers on the grill. So now that I have your attention, here's what we're going to do. The librarian's usually cheerful voice had turned brittle. Cruz, you're going to come back over here and hand me that book. Then the two of you are going to step away so I have a clear path to the door. Got it? Cruz was confused. But, do what he says, son, instructed his dad. Okay, said Cruz. He wasn't sure what was going on. Did Mr. Rock think they were going to steal something? Move, ordered the librarian. Cruz started to hurry toward the two men. Slowly, barked Rook. Putting on the brakes, Cruz inched his way along the narrow path between the furniture. His mouth was dry, his hands starting to tingle. He felt a bead of sweat trickle down his back. That's far enough, said Crook, when Cruz was at arm's length. The librarian took the book and placed it on top of the antique map cabinet next to him. He motioned with his weapon. Marco, go stand with your son. Things always this exciting around here? Asked his dad. You have no idea, answered Cruz. Quiet, both of you, and keep your hands up. Rook gingerly opened the cover of the book and turned the pages with a gloved hand. Cruz and his dad remained still, watching page after page go by. Rook went faster and faster. The more pages he turned, the more careless he became. Suddenly he stopped. Rook had reached the page with the white bookmark. Cruz held his breath. Was there anything written on it? Rook lifted out the 3-by-3-inch square of scrap paper. He flipped the bookmark. It's blank. Cruz exhaled. Another dead end. You're right about that. Rook raised his handheld laser. Hold on there, burst Cruz's dad. We're no threat to you, sir. You don't have to do this. The librarian's eyes turned icy. You are. And I do. Cruz had seen that severe look before. He had a hunch. Nebula, snapped Cruz, and when the librarian stiffened, he knew his gut was right. You're working for Nebula, aren't you? What can I say? I've got a few secrets, and I need to make sure it stays that way. Rook's lip twisted. Besides, it's very good money. It usually is, muttered Cruz's dad. Sorry, recruit. Rook flipped a switch on the laser to increase the intensity of the pulse, no doubt. He took aim at Cruz. You could have been a good explorer. Cruz knew he should have been terrified, but he wasn't. Instead, a strange kind of calmness began to spread through him. It was like back home when he'd toss his board into the surf, paddle out, and ride the waves. There are things you know about yourself, deep inside, things no one has to tell you or teach you. You just know them. Staring past the weapon into Rook's hard eyes, Cruz lifted his chin and said what he knew. I am a good explorer. Then he turned, so he would be facing his father when he took his last breath. Thanks for listening, guys. Next time when we return, we'll find out what happens to Cruz in Chapter 19.